Hi. Hello, it's me. Hi. My music is very loud for some reason. Hi. I'm alive. Reading for once even. How long has it been since I read this damn book? 2 weeks? 3 weeks? It's been a while in any case, but I almost forgot what even happened in it. So we're just gonna have to dive right into it, I think, and maybe we'll remember. All I know is that let's see, what happened? The apocalypse is beginning. Everything's falling apart. And Aziraphale got taken into heaven because the apocalypse is beginning, and Crowley is being hunted by hell because he didn't do a good job of the apocalypse. That's about the thing, right? That's about what I remember. So we're just gonna have to get into it, and we'll remember, I think. Boop. Turn on my good old reading music. There you go. Shut my door so Archibald doesn't open it all the time. Hold on. I'm gonna adjust my webcam's positioning a bit. Yeah. So that the animals are more visible. You want to have the animals visible. And I suppose we should begin. We got a little over half of the book left. I suppose we'll try and get through a half of the remaining amount, maybe. Or whenever I start feeling too wobbly, because today has been a rough day. Let us begin. She rode a red motorbike, not a friendly Honda Red, a deep, bloody red, rich and dark and hateful. The bike was, apparently, in every other respect, ordinary, except for the sword resting in its scabbard set onto the side of the bike. Her helmet was crimson, and her leather jacket was the color of old wine. In ruby studs on the back were picked out the words, Hell's Angels. It was 1:10 in the afternoon, and it was dark and humid and wet. The motorway was almost deserted, and the woman in red roared down the road on her red motorbike, smiling lazily. It had been a good day so far. There was something about the sight of a beautiful woman on a powerful motorbike with a sword stuck on the back that had a powerful effect on a certain type of man. So far, 4 traveling salesmen had tried to raise her, and bits of Ford Sierra now decorated the crash barriers and bridge supports along 40 miles of motorway. She pulled up at the service area and went into the Happy Porker Cafe. It was almost empty. A bored waitress was darning a sock behind the counter, and a knot of black-leather bikers, hard, hairy, filthy, and huge, were clustered around an even taller individual in a black coat. He was resolutely playing something that in bygone years would have been a fruit machine, but now had a video screen and advertised itself as Trivia Scrabble. The audience were saying things like, "It's D, press D. The Godfather must have got more Oscars than Gone with the Wind. Puppet on a String, Sandy Shaw. Honest, I'm bleeding positive. 1666. No, you great pillock, that was the fire. The plague was 1665. It's B, the Great Wall of China wasn't one of the 7 wonders of the world." There were 4 options: pop music, sport, current events, and general knowledge. The tall biker who had kept his helmet on was pressing the buttons, to all intents and purposes oblivious of his supporters. At any rate, he was consistently winning. The Red Rider went over to the counter. "A cup of tea, please, and a cheese sandwich," she said. "On your own, then, dear?" asked the waitress, passing the tea, and something white and dry and hard across the counter. "Waiting for friends." Ah, she said, biting through some wool. Well, you're better off waiting in here. It's hell out there. No, she told her. Not yet. She picked a window table with a good view of the parking lot, and she waited. She could hear the trivia scrabblers in the background. That's a new one. How many times has England been officially at war with France since 1066? 20? Nah, it's never 20. Oh, it was. Well, I never. American war with Mexico? I know that. It's June 1845. D. See? I told you. The second shortest biker, Pigbog, 6'3", whispered to the shortest, Greaser, 6'2". What happened to sport then? He had love tattooed on one of the set of knuckles, hate on the other. It's a random was-it selection, and they do it with microchips. It's probably got like millions of different subjects in there, and it's RAM. He had fish across his right-hand knuckle and chip on the left. Pop music, current events, general knowledge, and war. It's just I've never seen war before. That's why I mentioned it. Big Bog cracked his knuckles loudly and pulled the ring tab on a can of beer. He swigged back half a can, belched carelessly, then sighed. I just wish they'd do more bleeding Bible questions. Why? Greaser had never thought of Big Bog as being a Bible trivia freak. 'Cause, well, you remember that bit of bother in Brighton? Oh yeah, you was on Crime Watch, said Greaser with a trace of envy. Well, I had to hang out in that hotel when me ma'am worked, didn't I? 3 months, and nothing to read. Only the bugger Gideon had left his Bible behind. It kinda sticks in your mind. Another motorbike, jet black and gleaming, drew up in the car park outside. The door to the cafe opened. A blast of cold wind blew through the room. A man dressed all in black leather with a short black beard walked over to the table, sat next to the woman in red, and the bikers around the video Scrabble machine suddenly noticed how hungry they all were, and deputed Scuzz to go and get them something to eat. All of them except the player, who said nothing, just pressed the buttons for the right answers and let his winnings accumulate in the tray at the bottom of the machine. I haven't seen you since Mafeking, said Red. How's it been going? I've been keeping busy, said Black. Spent a lot of time in America. Brief little tours. Just killing time, really. What do you mean you got no steak and kidney pies? Asked Scuzz, affronted. I thought we had some, but we don't, said the woman. Feels funny, all of us finally getting together like this, said Red. Funny? Well, you know, when you spent all these thousands of years waiting for the big day and it finally comes, like waiting for Christmas. Or birthdays. We don't have birthdays. I didn't say we do, I just said that was what it was like. Actually, admitted the woman, it doesn't look like we got anything left at all except that slice of pizza. Has it got anchovies on it? Asked Scuzz gloomily. None of the chapter liked anchovies. Or olives. Yes, dear, it's anchovy and olives. Would you like it? Scuzz shook his head sadly. Stomach rumbling, he made his way back to the game. Big Ted got irritable when he got hungry, and when Big Ted got irritable, everyone got a slice. A new category had come up on the video screen. You could now answer questions about pop music, current events, famine, or war. The bikers seemed marginally less informed about the Irish potato famine of 1846, the English everything famine of 1315, and the 1969 dope famine in San Francisco than they had been about war. But the player was still racking up a perfect score, punctuated occasionally by a whir, ratchet, and chink, as the machine disgorged pound coins into its tray. Weather looks a bit tricky down south, said Red. Black squinted at the darkening clouds. No, looks fine to me. We'll have a thunderstorm along any minute. Red looked at her nails. That's good. It wouldn't be the same if you didn't have a good thunderstorm. Any idea how far we got to ride? Black shrugged. A few 100 miles. I thought it'd be longer somehow. All that waiting just for a few 100 miles. It's not the traveling, said Black. It's the arriving that matters. There was a roar outside. It was the roar of a motorbike with a defective exhaust, untuned engine, leaky carburetor. You didn't have to see the bike to imagine the clouds of black smoke it traveled in, the oil slicks it left in its wake, the trail of small motorbike parts and fittings that littered the roads behind it. Black went up to the counter. 4 teas, please, he said. 1 black. The cafe door opened. A young man in dusty white leathers entered, and the wind blew empty crisp packets and newspapers and ice cream wrappers in with him. They danced around his feet like excited children, then fell exhausted to the floor. 4 of you, are there, dear? Asked the woman. She was trying to find some clean cups and teaspoons. The entire rack seemed suddenly to have been coated in a light film of motor oil and dried egg. There will be, said the man in black, and he took the teas and went back to the table where his 2 comrades waited. Any sign of him? Said the boy in white. They shook their heads. An argument had broken out around the video screen. Current categories showing up on the screen were war, famine, pollution, and pop trivia 1962 to 1979. Elvis Presley? There's gotta be C. It was 1977 he snuffed it, wasn't it? Nah, D, 1976. I'm positive. Yeah, same year as Bing Crosby. And Mark Bolan. He was dead good. Press D, then. Go on. The tall figure made no motion to press any of the buttons. What's the matter with you? Asked Big Ted irritably. Go on, press D. Elvis Presley died in 1976. I don't care what it says, said the tall biker in the helmet. I never laid a finger on him. The 3 people at the table turned as one. Red spoke. When did you get here? She asked. The tall man walked over to the table, leaving the astonished bikers and his winnings behind him. I never went away, he said, and his voice was a dark echo from the night places, a cold slab of sound, gray and dead. If that voice was a stone, it would have had words chiseled on it a long time ago, a name and 2 dates. Your tea is getting cold, Lord, said Famine. It's been a long time, said War. There was a flash of lightning, almost immediately followed by a low rumble of thunder. Lovely weather for it, said Pollution. Yes. The bikers around the game were getting progressively baffled by this exchange. Led by Big Ted, they shambled over to the table and stared at the 4 strangers. It did not escape their notice that all 4 strangers had Hell's Angels on their jackets, and they looked dead dodgy as far as the angels were concerned. Too clean for a start, and none of the 4 looked like they'd ever broken anyone's arm just because it was Sunday afternoon and there wasn't anything good on the telly. And one was a woman, too, only not riding around the back of someone's bike, but actually allowed one of her own, like she had any right to it. You're Hell's Angels, then? Asked Big Ted sarcastically. If there's one thing real Hell's Angels can't abide, it's weekend bikers. Footnote saying, there are a number of other things real Hell's Angels can't abide. These include the police, soap, 4 cantinas, and in Big Ted's case, anchovies and olives. The 4 strangers nodded. What chapter are you from, then? The tall stranger looked at Big Ted. Then he stood up. It was a complicated motion. If the shores of the Seas of Night had deck chairs, they'd open up something like that. He seemed to be unfolding himself forever. He wore a dark helmet, completely hiding his features, and it was made of that weird plastic, Big Ted noted. Like, you looked in it, and all you could see was your own face. Revelations, he said. Chapter 6. Verses 2 to 8, added the boy in white, helpfully. Big Ted glared at the 4 of them. His lower jaw began to protrude, and the little blue vein in his temple started to throb. What's that mean, then? He demanded. There was a tug at his sleeve. It was Pigbog. He had gone a peculiar shade of gray under the dirt. It means we're in trouble, said Pigbog. And then the tall stranger reached up a pale motorbike gauntlet and raised the visor of his helmet, and Big Ted found himself wishing, for the first time in his existence, that he'd lived a better life. "Jesus Christ!" he moaned. "I think he may be along in a minute," said Pig Bog urgently. "He's probably looking for somewhere to park his bike. Let's go and join the youth club or something." But Big Ted's invincible ignorance was his shield and armor. He didn't move. "Core," he said. "Hell's Angels." Ward flipped him a lazy salute. "That's us, Big Ted," she said. "The real McCoy." Famine nodded. "The old firm," he said. Pollution removed his helmet and shook out his long, white hair. He'd taken over when Pestilence, muttering about penicillin, had retired in 1936. If only the old boy had known what opportunities the future had held. "Others promise," he said. "We deliver." Big Ted looked at the fourth horseman. "Here, I see you before," he said. "You was on the cover of that Blue Oyster Cult album. And I got a ring with your head on it." "I get everywhere." "Core." Big Ted's big face screwed up with the effort of thought. "What kind of bike you riding?" he said. And the storm raged around the quarry. The rope with the old car tire on it danced in the gale. Sometimes a sheet of iron, relic of an attempt at a treehouse, would shake loose from its insubstantial moorings and sail away. The them huddled together, staring at Adam. He seemed bigger somehow. Dog sat and growled. He was thinking of all the smells he would lose. There were no smells in hell apart from the sulfur. Well, some of them were, well, the fact was there were no bitches in hell either. Adam was marching about excitedly, waving his hands in the air. "There'll be no end to the fun we can have," he said. "There'll be exploring and everything. I suspect I can soon get the old jungles to grow again." But who'll do the, all the cooking and washing and such like?" quavered Brian. "No one will have to do any of that stuff," said Adam. "You can have all the food you like, loads of chips, fried onion rings, anything you like, and never have to wear any new clothes or have a bath if you don't want to or anything, or go to school or anything, or do anything you don't want to do ever again. It'll be wicked." The moon came over the Cocamundi Hills. It was very bright tonight. Johnny Two Bones sat in the rest basin of the desert. It was a sacred place where two ancestral rocks formed in the Dreamtime lay as they had since the beginning. Johnny Two Bones' walkabout was coming to an end. His cheeks and chest were smeared with red ochre, and he was singing an old song, a sort of singing map of the hills, and he was drawing patterns in the dust with his spear. He had not eaten for 2 days. He had not slept. He was approaching a trance state, making him one with the bush, putting him into communion with his ancestors. He was nearly there. Nearly. He blinked, looked around wonderingly. "Excuse me, dear boy," he said to himself out loud in precise, enunciated tones, "but have you any idea where I am?" "Who said that?" said Johnny Two Bones. His mouth opened. "I did." Johnny scratched thoughtfully. "I take it you're one of me ancestors then, mate?" "Oh, indubitably, dear boy. Quite indubitably. In a manner of speaking. Now, to get back to my original question, where am I?" "Only if you're one of my ancestors," continued Johnny Two Bones. "Why are you talking like a poofter?" "Ah, Australia," said Johnny Two Bones' mouth, pronouncing the word as though it would have to be properly disinfected before he said it again. "Oh dear. Well, thank you anyway." "Hello? Hello?" said Johnny Two Bones. He sat in the sand and he waited, but he didn't reply. Aziraphale had moved on. Citron do Chevaux was Tonton Makut, a traveling Hungan. Footnote saying, a magician or priest. Voodoo is a very interesting religion for the whole family, even those members of it who are dead. And the footnote. He had the satchel over his shoulder containing magical plants, medicinal plants, bits of wildcat, black candles, a powder derived chiefly from the skin of a certain dried fish, a dead centipede, a half bottle of Chivas Regal, 10 Rothmans, and a copy of What's On in Haiti. He hefted the knife and, with an experienced slicing motion, cut the head from the black cockerel. Blood washed over his right hand. "Lo, ride me," he intoned. "Grosbonange, come to me." "Where am I?" he said. "Is that my Grosbonange?" he asked himself. "I think that's a rather personal question," he replied. "I mean, as these things go, but one tries, as it were. One does one's best." Citron found one of his hands reaching for the cockerel. "Rather unsanitary place you do your cooking, don't you think? Out here in the jungle? Having a barbecue, are we? What kind of place is this?" "Haitian," he answered. "Damn, nowhere near. Still, could be worse. I must be on my way. Be good." And Citron d'Auchevaux was alone in his head. "Laws be buggered," he muttered to himself. He stared into nothing for a while and then reached for the satchel and its bottle of Chivas Regal. There are at least 2 ways to turn someone into a zombie. He was going to take the easiest. The surf was loud on the beaches. The palms shook. A storm was coming. The lights went up. The power cable, Nebraska. Evangelical choir launched into "Jesus is the telephone repairman on the switchboard of my life," and almost drowned out the sound of the rising wind. Marvin O'Bagman adjusted his tie, checked his grin in the mirror, patted the bottom of his personal assistant. Miss Cindy Kellerhell's penthouse pet of the month 3 years ago last July, but she had put that all behind her when she got career. And he walked out onto the studio floor. Jesus won't cut you off before you're through. With him, you won't never get a cross line. And when your bill comes, it'll all be properly itemized. He's the telephone repairman on the switchboard of my life, the choir sang. Marvin was fond of that song. He had written it himself. Other songs he had written included "Happy Mr. Jesus," "Jesus, Can I Come and Stay at Your Place," "That Old Fiery Cross," "Jesus is the sticker on the bumper of my soul," and "When I'm Swept Up by the Rapture, Grab the Wheel of My Pickup." They were available on "Jesus is My Buddy" LP, cassette, and CD, and were advertised every 4 minutes on Bagman's Evangelical Network. Footnote saying $12.95 per LP or cassette, $24.95 per CD, although you got a free copy of the LP with every $500 you donated to Marvin Bagman's mission. And the footnote. Despite the fact that the lyrics didn't rhyme or, as a rule, make any sense, and that Marvin, who was not particularly musical, had stolen all the tunes from old country songs, "Jesus is My Buddy" had sold over 4 million copies. Marvin had started off as a country singer, singing old Conway Twitty and Johnny Cash songs. He had done regular live concerts from San Quentin jail until the civil rights people got him under the cruel and unusual punishment clause. It was then that Marvin got religion. Not the quiet, personal kind that involves doing good deeds and living a better life. Not even the kind that involves putting on a suit and ringing people's doorbells, but the kind that involves having your own TV network and getting people to send you money. He had found the perfect TV mix on Marvin's Hour of Power, the show that put the fun back into Fundamentalist. 4 3-minute songs from the LP, 20 minutes of Hellfire, and 5 minutes of healing people. The remaining 23 minutes was spent alternatively cajoling, pleading, threatening, begging, and occasionally simply asking for money. In the early days, he had actually brought people into the studio to heal, but had found that too complicated. So these days, he simply proclaimed the visions vouchsafed to him of viewers all across America getting magically cured as they watched. This was much simpler. He no longer needed to hire actors, and there was no way anyone could check on his success rate. Footnote saying, it might have surprised Marvin to know there actually was a success rate. Some people would get better from anything. And the footnote. The world is a lot more complicated than most people believe. Many people believed, for example, that Marvin was not a true believer because he made so much money out of it. They were wrong. He believed with all his heart. He believed utterly and spent a lot of the money that flooded in on what he really thought was the Lord's work. The phone line to the Savior is always free of interference. He's in at any hour, day or night. And when you call GESUS, you always call toll-free. He's the telephone repairman on the switchboard of my life. The first song concluded, and Marvin walked in front of the cameras and raised his arms modestly for silence. In the control booth, the engineer turned down the applause track. Brothers and sisters, thank you, thank you. Wasn't that beautiful? And remember, you can hear that song and others just as edifying on Jesus Is My Buddy. Just phone 0800-CASH and pledge your donation now. He became more serious. Brothers and sisters, I've got a message for you all. An urgent message from our Lord, for you all, man and woman and little babe. Friends, let me tell you about the apocalypse. It's all there in your Bible, in the revelation our Lord gave St. John on Patmos, and in the book of Daniel. The Lord always gives it to you straight, friends, your future. So what's going to happen? War, plague, famine, death, rivers of blood, great earthquakes, nuclear missiles. Horrible times are coming, brothers and sisters, and there's only one way to avoid them. Before the destruction comes, before the fourth horseman of the apocalypse ride out, before the nuclear missiles rain down on the unbelievers, there will come the rapture. What's the rapture, I hear you cry? When the rapture comes, brothers and sisters, all the true believers will be swept up in the air. Don't mind what you're doing. You could be in the bath. You could be at work. You could be driving your car or just sitting at home reading your Bible. Suddenly you'll be up there in the air in perfect and incorruptible bodies, and you'll be up in the air looking down at the world as the years of destruction arrive. Only the faithful will be saved. Only those of you who have been born again will avoid the pain and the death and the horror and the burning. Then will come the great war between heaven and hell, and heaven will destroy the forces of hell, and God shall wipe away the tears of the suffering, and there shall be no more death, or sorrow, or crying, or pain, and he shall reign in glory forever and ever. He stopped suddenly. Well, nice try, he said, in a completely different voice. Only it won't be like that at all. Not really. I mean, you're right about the fire and war, all that. But that rapture stuff? Well, you could see them all in heaven. Seri drank to them as far as the mind can fall and beyond. League after league of us. Flaming swords and all that. Well, what I'm trying to say is, who has time to go around picking people out and popping them up in the air to sneer at the people dying of radiation sickness on the parched and burning earth below them? If that's your idea of a morally acceptable time, I might add. And as for that stuff about heaven inevitably winning, well, to be honest, if it were that cut and dry, there wouldn't be a celestial war in the first place, would there? It's propaganda, pure and simple. We got no more than a 50% chance of winning out on top. You might just as well send money to a Satanist hotline to cover your bets, although to be frank, when the fire falls and the seas of blood rise, you lot are all going to be civilian casualties either way. Between our war and your war, they're going to kill everyone and let God sort it out, right? Anyway, sorry to stand here withering. Just a quick question. Where am I? Marvin O'Bagman was gradually going purple. It's the devil! Lord, protect me! The devil is speaking through me! He erupted and interrupted himself. Oh no, quite the opposite in fact. I am an angel. Ah, this has to be America, doesn't it? So sorry, can't stay. There was a pause. Marvin tried to open his mouth, but nothing happened. Whatever was in his head looked around. He looked at the studio crew, those who weren't phoning the police or sobbing in corners. He looked at the gray-faced cameraman. Gosh, he said, am I on television? Crowley was doing 120 miles an hour down Oxford Street. He reached into the glove compartment for his spare pair of sunglasses and found only cassettes. Irritably, he grabbed one at random and pushed it into the slot. He wanted Bach, but he would settle for the Traveling Wilburys. All we need is Radio Gaga, said Freddie Mercury. All I need is out, thought Crowley. He swung around the Marble Arc roundabout the wrong way, doing 90. Lightning made the London skies flicker like a malfunctioning fluorescent tube. A livid sky on London, Crowley thought, and I knew the end was near. Who had written that? Chesterton, was it? The only poet in the 20th century to even come close to the truth. The Bentley headed out of London while Crowley sat back in the driver's seat and thumbled through the signed copy of The Nice and Accurate Prophecies of Agnes Nutter. Near the end of the book, he found a folded sheet of paper covered in Aziraphale's neat copper-plate handwriting. He unfolded it, while the Bentley's gear stick shifted itself down to third, and the car accelerated around the fruit lorry, which had unexpectedly backed out of a side street. And then he read it again. Then he read it one more time, with a slow sinking feeling at the base of his stomach. The car changed direction suddenly. It was now heading for the village of Tadfield in Oxfordshire. He could be there in an hour if he hurried. Anyway, there wasn't really anywhere else to go. The cassette finished, activating the car radio. Gardener's question time coming to you from Tadfield Gardening Club. We were last here in 1953, a very nice summer, and as the team will remember, it's a rich Oxfordshire loam in the east of the parish, rising to chalk in the west. The kind of place, so I say, don't matter what you plant here. If it'll come up beautiful, isn't that right, Fred? Yep, said Professor Fred Windbright, Royal Botanical Gardens. Couldn't have put it better myself. Right. First question for the team, and this comes from Mr. R.P. Tyler, chairman of the local Residents Association, I do believe. That's right. Well, I'm a keen rose grower, but my prize-winning Molly Maguire lost a couple of blossoms yesterday in the rain of what were apparently fish. What does the team recommend for this, other than place netting over the garden? I mean, I've written to the council. Not a common problem, I'd say, Harry. Mr. Tyler, let me ask you a question. Were these fresh fish or preserved? Fresh, I believe. Well, you've got no problems, my friend. I hear you've also been having rains of blood in these parts, and I wish we had these up in the Dales, where my garden is. Save me a fortune in fertilizers. Now what you do is you dig them into your... Crowley! Crowley said nothing. Crowley, the war has begun, Crowley. We note with interest that you avoided the forces we empowered to collect you. Crowley agreed. Crowley, we will win this war, but even if we lose, at least as far as you are concerned, it will make no difference at all. For as long as there is one demon left in hell, Crowley, you will wish you had been created mortal. Crowley was silent. Mortals can hope for death, or for redemption. You can hope for nothing. All you can hope for is the mercy of hell. Yeah? Just our little joke, said Crowley. Now, as keen gardeners know, it goes without saying that he's a cunning little devil, your Tibetan, tunneling straight through your begonias like it was nobody's business. A cup of tea will shift him, with rancid yak butter for preference. You should be able to get some at any good guard. Whiz, pop, static drowned out the rest of the program. Crowley turned off the radio and bit his lower lip. Beneath the ash and soot that flaked his face, he looked very tired, and very pale, and very scared, and suddenly very angry. It was the way they talked to you, as if you were a houseplant who had started shedding leaves on the carpet. And then he turned a corner, which was meant to take him onto the slip road to the M25, from which he'd swing off onto the M40 up to Oxfordshire. But something that happened to the M25, something that hurt your eyes, if you look directly at it. From what had been the M25 London orbital motorway came a low chanting, a noise formed of many strands, car horns and engines and sirens and the bleep of cellular telephones, and the screaming of small children trapped by backseat seatbelts forever. Hail the great beast, devourer of worlds, came the chanting, over and over again, in the secret tongue of the black priesthood of ancient Mu. The dreaded sigil Odegra, thought Crowley, as he swung the car around, heading for the North Circular. I did that. That's my fault. It could have been just another motorway. A good job, I'll grant you, but was it really worthwhile? It's all out of control. Heaven and hell aren't running things anymore. It's like the whole planet is a third world country that's finally got the bomb. Then he began to smile. He snapped his fingers. A pair of dark glasses materialized out of his eyes. The ash vanished from his suit and his skin. What the hell? If you had to go, why not go with style? Whistling softly, he drove. End of chapter. Gotta stretch and drink. And put my goddamn phone on Do Not Disturb, which I always forget to do because I always get some sort of message or notification or whatever. Yeah, big stretch. Oof. Actually, since we're coming up on an ad break in like 10 or so minutes, I suppose I'll just take that and we can continue afterwards so that we do not get interrupted later. Wow. I return. Hello. Right. Let me just take another sip of water and continue. This next chapter is a long one. It's like an hour long. God dang. Which should take us just about time until the next ad break to read. Hello, waterfall, by the way. Right. They came down the outside lane of the motorway like destroying angels, which was fair enough. They weren't going that fast, all things considered. The four of them were holding a steady 105 miles per hour, as if they were confident that the smoke could not start before they got there. It couldn't. They had all the time in the world, such as it was. Just behind them came four other riders: Big Ted, Greaser, Big Bog, and Scuzz. They were elated. They were real Hell's Angels now, and they rode the silence. Around them, they knew, was the roar of the thunderstorm, the thunder of traffic, the whipping of the wind and the rain. But in the wake of the horsemen there was silence, pure and dead. Almost pure, anyway. Certainly dead. It was broken by Big Bog shouting to Big Ted. "What are you gonna be then?" he asked hoarsely. "What?" "I said, what you..." "I heard what you said. It's not what you said. Everyone heard what you said. What did you mean? That's what I want to know." Big Bog wished he'd paid more attention to the Book of Revelation. If he'd known he was going to be in it, he'd have read it more carefully. "What I mean is, they're the fourth horsemen of the apocalypse, right?" "Bikers," said Greaser. "Right. 4 bikers of the apocalypse. War, famine, death, and the other one. Pollution." "Yeah, so?" "So they said it was alright if we came with them, right?" "So we're the other 4 bikers of the apocalypse. So which ones are we?" There was a pause. The lights of passing cars shot past them in the opposite lane, lighting after imaged the clouds, and the silence was close to absolute. "Can I be war as hell as well?" asked Big Ted. "Of course you can't be war. How can you be war? She's war. You got to be something else." Big Ted screwed up his face with the effort of thought. "GBH," he said. Eventually, "I'm grievous bodily harm. That's me. There. What are you going to be?" "Can I be rubbish?" asked Scuzz. "Or embarrassing personal problems?" "Can't be rubbish," said grievous bodily harm. "He's got that one sewn up, pollution. He can't be the other, though." They rode on in the silence and the dark, the rear red lights of the 4 a few hundred yards in front of them. Grievous bodily harm, embarrassing personal problems, Big Bog and Greaser. "I wonder it'd be cruelty to animals," said Greaser. Big Bog wondered if he was for or against it. Not that it really mattered. And then it was Big Bog's turn. I think I'll be them answer phones. They're pretty bad," he said. "You can't be answer phones. What kind of a biker of the apocalypse is answer phones? The stupid, that is." "It's not," said Big Bog, nettled. "It's like war and famine, and that, it's a problem of life, isn't it? Answer phones. I hate bloody answer phones. I hate answer phones too, said Cruelty to Animals. You can shut up, said GBH. Can I change mine? Asked Embarrassing Personal Problems, who had been thinking intently since he last spoke. I want to be things not working properly even after you thumbed them. Alright, you can change, but you can't be answer phones, Big Bog. Pick something else. Big Bog pondered. He wished he'd never broached the subject. It was like the careers as interviewers he had had as a schoolboy. He deliberated. Really cool people, he said at last. I hate them. Really cool people, said things not working properly even after you've given them a good thumping. Yeah, you know, the kind you see on telly with stupid haircuts. Only on them it don't look stupid because it's them. They wear baggy out suits and you're not allowed to say they're a bunch of wankers, I mean. Speaking for me, what I always want to do when I see one of them is punch their faces very slowly through a barbed wire fence. And what I think is this. He took a deep breath. He was sure this was the longest speech he had ever made in his life. Footnote saying, except for one about 10 years earlier, throwing himself on the mercy of the court. What I think is this. If they get up my nose like that, they probably get up everyone else's. Yeah, said Cruelty to Animals, and they all wear sunglasses even when they don't need them. Eating runny cheese and that stupid bloody no-alcohol lager, said things not working properly and if you've given them a good thumping. I hate that stuff. What's the point of drinking the stuff if it don't leave you puking? Here I just thought, can I change again? Some no-alcohol lager? No, you bloody can't, said Grievous Bodily Harm. You've changed once already. Anyway, said Big Bog, that's why I want her to be really cool people. Alright, said his leader. Don't see why can't be no bloody alcohol lager if I want. Shut your face. Death and famine and war and pollution continued biking towards Tadfield. And grievous bodily harm, cruelty to animals, things not working properly even after giving them a good thumping, but secretly no alcohol lager, and really cool people traveled with them. It was a wet and blustery Saturday afternoon, and Madame Tracy was feeling very occult. She had her flowing dress on, and a saucepan full of sprouts on the stove. The room was lit by candlelight. Each candle carefully placed in a wax-encrusted wine bottle at the four corners of her sitting room. There were 3 other people at her sitting. Mrs. Ormerod from Belsize Park, in a dark green hat that might have been a flower pot in a previous life. Mr. Scroggy, thin and pallid, with bulging colorless eyes. And Julia Petley from Hair Today, footnote saying, formerly a cut above the rest, formerly main attraction, formerly curl up and die, formerly a snip at the price, formerly Mr. Bryant's Art de Coiffure, formerly Robinson at the barber's, formerly phone at the car taxis. End the footnote. The hairdressers on the high street. Fresh out of school and convinced that she herself had unplumbed occult depths. In order to enhance the occult aspects of herself, Julia had begun to wear far too much hand-beaten silver jewelry and green eyeshadow. She felt she looked haunted and gaunt and romantic, and she would have if she had lost another 30 pounds. She was convinced that she was anorexic because every time she looked in the mirror she did indeed see a fat person. "Can you link hands?" asked Madame Tracy. "And we must have complete silence. The spirit world is very sensitive to vibration." "Ask if my Ron is there," said Mrs. Ormerod. She had a jaw like a brick. "I will, love, but you got to be quiet while I make contact." There was silence, broken only by Mr. Scroggy's stomach rumbling. "Pardon, ladies," he mumbled. Madame Tracy had found, through years of drawing aside the veil and exploring the mysteries, that 2 minutes was the right length of time to sit in silence, waiting for the spirit world to make contact. More than that and they got restive. Less than that and they felt they weren't getting their money's worth. She did her shopping list in her head. Eggs, lettuce, ounce of cooking cheese, 4 tomatoes, butter, roll of toilet paper. Mustn't forget that, we're nearly out. And a really nice piece of liver from Mr. Shadwell. Poor old soul. It's a shame. Time. Madame Tracy threw back her head, let it slow on one shoulder, then slowly lifted it again. Her eyes were almost shut. "She's going under now, dear," she heard Mrs. Ormerod whisper to Julia Petley. "Nothing to be alarmed about. She's just making herself a bridge to the other side. Her spirit guide will be along soon." Madame Tracy found herself rather irritated at being upstaged, and she let out a low moan. "Oh!" Then, in a high-pitched, quaverly voice, "Are you there, my spirit guide?" She waited a little to build up the suspense, washing up liquid, 2 cans of baked beans. Oh, and potatoes. "How?" she said in a dark brown voice. "Is that you, Geronimo?" she asked herself. "Is, me. How?" she replied. "We have a new member of the circle with us this afternoon," she said. "How? Miss Petley?" she said as Geronimo. She had always understood that Red Indian spirit guides were an essential prop, and she rather liked the name. She explained this to Newt. She didn't know anything about Geronimo, he realized, and he didn't have the heart to tell her. "Oh," squeaked Julia, "charmed to make your acquaintance." "Is my Ron there, Geronimo?" asked Mrs. Ormerod. "How, Squaw Beryl?" said Madame Tracy. "Oh, there are so many, of the poor lost souls, lined up against the, door to my teepee. Perhaps your Ron is amongst them. How?" Madame Tracy had learned her lesson years earlier, and now never brought Ron through until near the end. If she didn't, Beryl Ormerod would occupy the rest of the seance telling the late Ron Ormerod everything that had happened to her since their last little chat. "Now, Ron, you remember our Erixilla Sibylla? Well, you wouldn't recognize her now. She's taking up macrame, and our Letitia, you know, she's taking up our Karen's oldest. She's become a lesbian, but that's all right these days, and is doing a dissertation on the films of Sergio Leone as seen from a feminist perspective. And our Stan, you know, our Sandra's twin. I told you about him last time. Well, he won the darts tournament, which is nice because we all thought he was a bit of a mother's boy. Well, the guttering over the shed's come loose, but I spoke to our Cindy's latest, who's a jobbing builder, and he'll be over to see it on Sunday, and oh, that reminds me." No, Beryl Ormerod could wait. There was a flash of lightning, followed almost immediately by a rumble of distant thunder. Madame Tracy felt rather proud, as if she had done it herself. It was even better than the candles at creating ambulance. Ambulance was what mediuming was all about. "Now," said Madame Tracy in her own voice, "Mr. Geronimo would like to know, is there anyone named Mr. Scroggy here?" Scroggy's watery eyes gleamed. Actually, that's my name," he said hopefully. "Right. Well, there's somebody here for you, Mr. Scroggy." "There's somebody here for you." Mr. Scroggy had been coming for a month now, and she hadn't been able to think of a message for him. His time has come. "Do you know anyone named John?" "No," said Mr. Scroggy. "Well, there's some celestial interference here. The name could be Tom or Jim or Dave." "I knew a Dave when I was in Hemel Hempstead," said Mrs. Scroggy, a trifle doubtfully. "Yes, he's saying Hemel Hempstead. That's what he's saying," said Madame Tracy. "But I ran into him last week walking his dog, and he looked perfectly healthy," said Mr. Scroggy, slightly puzzled. "He says not to worry, and he's happier beyond the veil," soldiered on Madame Tracy, who felt it was always better to give her clients good news. "Tell my Ron I've got to tell him about our Crystal's wedding," said Mrs. Ormerod. "I will, love. Now, hold on a mo. There's something coming through." And then something came through. It sat in Madame Tracy's head and peered out. "Sprechen Sie Deutsch," it said, using Madame Tracy's mouth. "Parlez-vous Français? Wabui Jiang Xiongwen." "Is that you, Ron?" asked Mrs. Ormerod. The reply, when it came, was rather testy. "No, definitely not. However, a question so manifestly dumb can only have been put in one country on this benighted planet, most of which, incidentally, I have seen during the last few hours. Dear lady, this is not Ron." "Well, I want to speak to Ron Ormerod," said Mrs. Ormerod, a little testily. "He's rather short, balding on top. Can you put him on, please?" There was a pause. Actually, there does appear to be a spirit of that description hovering around here. Very well, I'll hand you over. But you must make it quick. I am attempting to avert the apocalypse. Mrs. Ormerod and Mr. Scroggy gave each other looks. Nothing like this had happened in Madame Tracy's previous sittings. Julia Petley was rapt. This was more like it. She hoped Madame Tracy was going to start manifesting ectoplasm next. Hello? Said Madame Tracy in another voice. Mrs. Ormerod started. It sounded exactly like Ron. On previous occasions, Ron had sounded like Madame Tracy. Ron, is that you? Yes, Beryl. Right. Now I've got quite a bit to tell you. For a start, I went to our Crystal's wedding last Saturday. Our Marilyn's eldest... Beryl, you never let me get a word in edgewise while I was alive. Now I'm dead. There's just one thing to say. Beryl Ormerod was a little disgruntled by all this. Previously, when Ron had manifested, he had told her that he was happier beyond the veil and living somewhere that sounded more than a little like a celestial bungalow. Now she sounded like Ron, and she wasn't sure that was what she wanted. And she said that what she had always said to her husband when he began to speak to her in that tone of voice. Ron, remember your heart condition? I don't have a heart anymore. Remember. Anyway, Beryl? Yes, Ron. Shut up! And the spirit was gone. Wasn't that touching? Right, now, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm afraid I shall have to be getting on. Madame Tracy stood up, went over to the door, and turned on the lights. Out, she said. Her sitters stood up, more than a little puzzled, and in Mrs. Ormerod's case, outraged, and they walked out into the hall. You haven't heard the last of this, Marjorie Potts, hissed Mrs. Ormerod, clutching her handbag to her breast, and she slammed the door. Then her muffled voice echoed from the hallway, and you can tell our Ron that he hasn't heard the last of this either. Madame Tracy, and the name of her scooter's only driving license was indeed Marjorie Potts, went into the kitchen and turned off the sprouts. She put on the kettle. She made herself a pot of tea. She sat down at the kitchen table, got out 2 cups, filled both of them. She added 2 sugars to one of them. Then she paused. No sugar for me, please, said Madame Tracy. She lined up the cups on the table in front of her, and took a long sip from the tea with sugar. Now, she said, in a voice that anyone who knew her would have recognized as her own, although they might not have recognized her tone of voice, which was cold with rage. Suppose you tell me what this is about, and it had better be good. Let me just take a short break. Yeah, big stretch. Hey, wee big stretch. All right. A lorry had shed its load all over the M6. According to its manifest, the lorry had been filled with sheets of corrugated iron, although the 2 police patrolmen were having difficulty in accepting this. So, what I want to know is, where did all the fish come from? Asked the sergeant. I told you they fell from the sky. 1 minute, I'm driving along at 60. Next second, whap! A 12-pound salmon smashes through the windscreen. So I pulls the wheel over and I skidded on that. He pointed to the remains of a hammerhead shark under the lorry, and ran into that. That was a 30-foot-high heap of fish, of different shapes and sizes. Have you been drinking, sir? Asked the sergeant, less than hopefully. Course I haven't been drinking, you great wazzock. You can see the fish, can't you? On the top of the pile, a rather large octopus waved a languid tentacle at them. The sergeant resisted the temptation to wave back. The police constable was leaning into the police car, talking on the radio. Corrugated iron and fish blocking off the southbound M6 about half a mile north of Junction 10. We're going to have to close off the whole southbound carriageway. Yeah. The rain redoubled. A small trout, which had miraculously survived the fall, gamely began to swim towards Birmingham. That was wonderful, said Newt. Good, said Anathema. The earth moved for everybody. She got off the floor, leaving her clothes scattered across the carpet, and went into the bathroom. Newt raised his voice. I mean, it was really wonderful. Really, really wonderful. I always hoped it was going to be, and it was. There was the sound of running water. What are you doing? He asked. Taking a shower. Ah. He wondered vaguely if everyone had to shower afterwards, or if it was just women. And he had a suspicion that bidets came into it somewhere. Tell you what, said Newt, as Anathema came out of the bathroom swathed in a fluffy pink towel. We could do it again. Nope, she said. Not now. She finished drying herself and started picking up clothes from the floor, and unselfconsciously pulling them on. Newt, a man who was prepared to wait half an hour for a free-changing cubicle at the swimming baths rather than face the possibility of having to disrobe in front of another human being, found himself vaguely shocked and deeply thrilled. Bits of her kept appearing and disappearing like a conjurer's hands. Newt kept trying to count her nipples and failing, although he didn't mind. Why not? Said Newt. He was about to point out that it might not take long, but an inner voice counseled him against it. He was growing up quite quickly in a short time. Anathema shrugged. Not an easy move when you're pulling on a sensible black skirt. She said we only did it this once. Newt opened his mouth 2 or 3 times and said, She didn't. She bloody didn't. She couldn't predict that. I don't believe it. Anathema, fully dressed, walked over to her card index, pulled one out and passed it to him. Newt read it and blushed and gave it back, tight-lipped. It wasn't simply the fact that Agnes had known and had expressed herself in the most transparent of codes. It was that down the ages various devices had scrawled encouraging little comments in the margin. She passed him the damn towel. Here, she said. Hurry up. I've got to make the sandwiches and we've got to get ready. He looked at the towel. What's this for? Your shower. Ah, so it was something men and women both did. He was pleased he'd got that sorted out. But you'll have to make it quick, she said. Why? Have we got to get out of here in the next 10 minutes before building explodes? Oh no, we got a couple of hours. It says that I've used up most of the hot water. You got a lot of plaster in your hair. The storm blew a dying gust around Jasmine Cottage, and holding the damp pink towel Nurungle Fruffy in front of him strategically, Newt edged off to take a cold shower. Stretch and drink. Hold on, I need to answer something. Let me just pause this. Okie dokie. Let us continue. In Shadwell's dream, he is floating high above a village green. In the center of the green is a huge pile of kindling wood and dry branches. In the center of the pile is a wooden stake. Men and women and children stand around on the grass, eyes bright, cheeks pink, expectant, excited. A sudden commotion. 10 men walk across the green, leading a handsome middle-aged woman. She must have been quite striking in her youth, and the word vivacious creeps into Shadwell's dreaming mind. In front of her walks Witchfinder Private Newton Pulsifer. No, it isn't Newt. The man is older and dressed in black leather. Shadwell recognized approvingly the ancient uniform of a Witchfinder Major. The woman climbs onto the pyre, thrusts her hands behind her and is tied to the stake. The pyre is lit. She speaks to the crowd, says something, but Shadwell is too high to hear what it is. The crowd gathers around her. A witch, thinks Shadwell. They're burning a witch. It gives him a warm feeling. That was the right and proper way of things. That's how things were meant to be. Only, she looks directly up at him now and says, "That goes for you as well, you daft old fool." Only she was going to die. She was going to burn to death, and Shadwell realized in his dream it was a horrible way to die. The flames lick higher, and the woman looks up. She's staring straight at him, invisible though he is, and she is smiling. And then it all goes boom. A crash of thunder. That was thunder, thought Shadwell, as he woke up, with the unshakable feeling that someone was still staring at him. He opened his eyes, and 13 glass eyes watched from the various shelves of Madame Tracy's boudoir, staring out from a variety of fuzzy faces. He looked away and into the eyes of someone staring intently at him. It was him. "Och," he thought in terror, "I'm having one of them out-of-your-body experiences. I can see my own self. I'm a goner this time, right enough." He made frantic swimming motions in an effort to reach his own body, and then, as these things do, the perspectives clicked into place. Shadwell relaxed and wondered why anyone would want to put a mirror on their bedroom ceiling. He shook his head, baffled. He climbed out of the bed, pulled on his boots, and stood up warily. Something was missing. A cigarette. He thrust his hands deep into his pockets, pulled out a tin, and began to roll a cigarette. He'd been dreaming, he knew. Shadwell didn't remember the dream, but it made him feel uncomfortable, whatever it was. He lit the cigarette, and he saw his right hand, the ultimate weapon, the doomsday device. He pointed one finger at the one-eyed teddy bear on the mantelpiece. "Bang," he said, and chuckled dustily. He wasn't used to chuckling, and he began to cough, which meant he was back on familiar territory. He wanted something to drink, a sweet can of condensed milk. Madame Tracy would have some. He stomped out of her boudoir, heading towards the kitchen. Outside the little kitchen, he paused. She was talking to someone. A man. "So what exactly do you want me to do about this?" she was asking. "Ah, ye beldame," muttered Shadwell. She had one of her gentleman callers in there, obviously. "To be frank, dear lady, my plans at this point are perforce somewhat fluid." Shadwell's blood ran cold. He marched through the bead curtain shouting, "The sins of Sodom and Gomorrah, taking advantage of the senseless ore, over my dead body!" Madame Tracy looked up and smiled at him. There wasn't anyone else in the room. "Where is he?" asked Shadwell. "Whom?" asked Madame Tracy. "Some southern pansy," he said. "I heard him. He was in here, suggesting things to yer. I heard him." Madame Tracy's mouth opened, and the voice said, "Not just a southern pansy, Sergeant Shadwell. The southern pansy." Shadwell dropped his cigarette. He stretched out his arm, shaking slightly, and pointed his hand at Madame Tracy. "Demon!" he croaked. "No," said Madame Tracy in the voice of the demon. "Now, I know what you're thinking, Sergeant Shadwell. You're thinking that any second now this head is going to go round, and I'm going to start vomiting pea soup. Well, I'm not. I'm not a demon, and I'd like you to listen to what I have to say." "Demon spawn, be silent," ordered Shadwell. "I'll no listen to your wicked lies. Do you know what this is? It's a hand. 4 fingers, 1 thumb. It's already exercised 1 year number this morning. Now get ye out of this good woman's head, or I'll blast ye to kingdom come." "That's the problem, Mr. Shadwell," said Madame Tracy in her own voice. "Kingdom come. It's going to, that's the problem. It's going to. Mr. Aziraphale has been telling me all about it. Now stop being an old silly, Mr. Shadwell. Sit down and have some tea, and he'll explain it to you as well." "I'll never listen to his hellish blandishments, woman," said Shadwell. Madame Tracy smiled at him. "You old silly," she said. He could have handled anything else. He sat down, but he didn't lower his hand. The swinging overhead signs proclaimed that the southbound carriageway was closed, and a small forest of orange cones had sprung up, redirecting motorists onto a co-opted lane of the northbound carriageway. Other signs directed motorists to slow down to 30 miles per hour. Police cars herded the drivers around like red-striped sheepdogs. The four bikers ignored all the signs and cones and police cars and continued down the empty southbound carriageway of the M6. The other four bikers just behind them slowed a little. Shouldn't we, stop or something? Asked really cool people. Yeah, could be a pileup, said treading in dog shit. Formerly all foreigners, especially the French, formerly things not working properly even when you've given them a good thumping, never actually no alcohol lager, briefly embarrassing personal problems, formerly known as cuz. We're the other four horsemen of the apocalypse, said GBH. We do what they do. We follow them. They rode south. It will be a world just for us, said Adam. Everything's always been messed up by other people, but we can get rid of it all and start again. Won't that be great? Let me just have a drink. All right. You are, I trust, familiar with the Book of Revelation, said Madame Tracy with Aziraphale's voice. Aye, said Shadwell, who wasn't. His biblical expertise began and ended with Exodus, chapter 22, verse 18, which concerned witches, the suffering to live of, and why you shouldn't. He had once glanced at verse 19, which was about putting to death people who lay down with beasts, but he had felt that this was rather outside his jurisdiction. Then you have heard of the Antichrist. Aye, said Shadwell, who had seen a film once which explained it all. Something about sheets of glass falling off lorries and slicing people's heads off, as he recalled. No proper witches to speak of. He'd gone to sleep halfway through. The Antichrist is alive on Earth at this moment, Sergeant. He is bringing about Armageddon, the day of judgment, even if he himself does not know it. Heaven and hell are both preparing for war, and it's all going to be very messy. Shadwell merely grunted. I'm not actually permitted to act directly in this matter, Sergeant, but I am sure that you can see that the imminent destruction of the world is not something any reasonable man would permit. Am I correct? I suppose, said Shadwell, sipping condensed milk from a rusting can Madame Tracy had discovered under the sink. There's only one thing should be done, and you are the only man I can rely on. The Antichrist must be killed, Sergeant Shadwell, and you must do it. Shadwell frowned. I wouldn't know about that, he said. The Witchfinder army only kills witches. There's one of the rules, and demons and imps, of course. But the Antichrist is more than just a witch. He's the witch. He's just about as witchy as you can get. Would it be harder to get rid of than, say, a demon? Asked Shadwell, who had begun to brighten. Not much more, said Aziraphale, who had never done other to get rid of demons than to hint to them very strongly that he, Aziraphale, had some work to be getting on with, and wasn't it getting late? And Crowley had always got the hint. Shadwell looked down at his right hand and smiled, then he hesitated. This Antichrist. How many nipples has he? The end justifies the means, thought Aziraphale, and the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Footnote saying, this is not actually true. The road to hell is paved with frozen door-to-door salesmen. On weekends, many of the younger demons go ice skating down it. End of footnote. And he lied cheerfully and convincingly. Oodles! Pots of them! His chest is covered with them! He makes Diana of the Ephesians look positively nippleless. I wouldn't know about this Diana of yours, said Shadwell, but he's a witch, and it sounds to me like he is, then, speaking as a sergeant in the WA, I'm your man. Good, said Aziraphale through Madame Tracy. I'm not sure about this killing business, said Madame Tracy herself, but if it's this man, this Antichrist, or everybody else, then I suppose we don't really have any choice. Exactly, dear lady, she replied. Now, Sergeant Shadwell, have you a weapon? Shadwell rubbed his right hand with his left, clenching and unclenching the fist. Aye, he said, I have that. And he raised 2 fingers to his lips and blew on them gently. There was a pause. Your hand? asked Aziraphale. Aye, this is a terrible weapon. It did for ye demon spawn, did it not? Have you anything more, substantial? How about the golden dagger of Megiddo, or the Shiv of Kali? Shadwell shook his head. I got some pins, he suggested. And the thunder gun of which finder colonel ye shall not eat any living thing with the blood, neither shall ye use enchantment nor observe time's Dalrymple. I could load it with silver bullets. That's werewolves, I believe, said Aziraphale. Garlic? Vampires. Shadwell shrugged. Aye, well, I didn't have any fancy bullets anyway, but the thunder gun will fire anything. I'll go and fetch it. He shuffled out, thinking, why do I need another weapon? I'm a man with a hand. Now, dear lady, said Aziraphale, I trust you have a reliable mode of transportation at your disposal? Oh, yes, said Madame Tracy. She went over to the corner of the kitchen and picked up a pink motorbike helmet with a yellow sunflower painted on it, and put it on, strapping it under her chin. Then she rummaged in a cupboard, pulled out 300 or 400 plastic shopping bags, and a heap of yellowing local newspapers. Then a dusty day-glow green helmet with Easy Rider written across the top. A present from her niece Petula 20 years before. Shadwell, returning with a thunder gun over his shoulder, stared at her unbelieving. I don't know what you're staring at, Mr. Shadwell, she told him. It's parked in the road downstairs. She passed him the helmet. You've got to put it on. It's the law. I don't think you're really allowed to have 3 people on the scooter, even if 2 of them are, sharing. But it's an emergency, and I'm sure you'll be quite safe if you hold on to me nice and tight. And she smiled. Won't that be fun? Shadwell paled, muttered something inaudible, and put on the green helmet. What was that, Mr. Shadwell? Madame Tracy looked at him sharply. I said... Dale dingativitafir wham we were flutter spades, said Shadwell. There'll be quite enough of that kind of language, Mr. Shadwell, said Madame Tracy, and she marched him out of the hall and down the stairs to Crouch End High Street, where an elderly scooter waited to take the 2. Well, call it 3 of them away. God, I think I'll just finish this chapter and finish up today, because my throat's not having it that much today. And 2 hours of reading is quite enough, I think. And then maybe we'll have another stream of reading and we can finish up the whole book. Oh, Archibald, oh my god, do not knock anything over. Shadwell is like difficult to read because he's got a thick accent written into his speech. Like, what the hell does Dale Dingadivata for your whammy with a flutter spade said mean even? Gah. I don't know. Anyway, let us continue. The lorry blocked the road, and the corrugated iron blocked the road, and the 30-foot-high pile of fish blocked the road. It was one of the most effectively blocked roads the sergeant had ever seen. The rain wasn't helping. Any idea when the bulldozers are likely to get here? He shouted into his radio. We're doing the best we came the reply. He felt something tugging at his trouser cuff and looked down. Lobsters? He gave a little skip and a jump and wound up on the top of the police car. Lobsters, he repeated. There were about 30 of them, some over 2 feet long. Most of them were on their way up the motorway. Half a dozen had stopped to check out the police car. Something wrong, Sarge? Asked the police constable, who was taking down the lorry driver's details on the hard shoulder. I just don't like lobsters, said the sergeant, grimly, shutting his eyes. Bring me out in a rash. Too many legs. I'll just sit up here a bit, and you can tell me when they've all gone. He sat on the top of the car, in the rain, and felt the water seeping into the bottom of his trousers. There was a low roar. Thunder? No. It was continuous and getting closer. Motorbikes. The sergeant opened one eye. Jesus Christ! There were 4 of them, and they had to be doing over 100. He was about to climb down, to wave at them, to shout, but they were past him, heading straight to the upturned lorry. There was nothing the sergeant could do. He closed his eyes again and listened for the collision. He could hear them coming closer. Then, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And the voice in his head that said, "I'll catch up with the rest of you." Did you see that? Asked really cool people. They flew right over it. "Getting hell," said GBH. "If they can do it, we can too." The sergeant opened his eyes. He turned to the police constable and opened his mouth. The police constable said, They flew right. Thud, 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 splat. There was another rain of fish, although of shorter duration and more easily explicable. A leather-jacketed arm waved feebly from the large pile of fish. A motorbike wheel spun hopelessly. That was Scuzz, semi-conscious, deciding that if there was one thing he hated even more than the French, it was being up to his neck in fish with what felt like a broken leg. He truly hated that. He wanted to tell GBH about his new role, but he couldn't move. Something wet and slippery slithered up one sleeve. Later, when they dragged him out of the fish pile and he'd seen the other 3 bikers with the blankets over their heads, he realized it was too late to tell them anything. That was why they hadn't been in that book of Revelations Pigbog had been going on about. They'd never made it that far down the motorway. Scuzz muttered something. The police sergeant leaned over. "Don't try to speak, son," he said. "The ambulance will be here soon." "Listen," croaked Scuzz. "Got something important to tell you. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, they're right bastards, all 4 of them." "He's delirious," announced the sergeant. "I'm sodden not. I'm people covered in fish," croaked Scuzz, and passed out. The London traffic system is many hundreds of times more complex than anyone imagines. This has nothing to do with influences, demonic or angelic. It's more to do with geography and history and architecture. Mostly this works to people's advantage, although they'd never believe it. London was not designed for cars. Come to that, it wasn't designed for people. It just sort of happened. This created problems, and the solutions that were implemented became the next problems, 5 or 10 or 100 years down the line. The latest solution had been the M25, a motorway that formed a rough circle around the city. Up until now, the problems had been fairly basic. Things like it being obsolete before they had finished building it, Einsteinian tailbags that eventually became tail forwards, that kind of thing. The current problem was that it didn't exist. Not in normal human spatial terms, anyway. The tailback of cars unaware of this or trying to find alternate routes out of London stretched into the city center from every direction. For the first time ever, London was completely gridlocked. The city was one huge traffic jam. Cars, in theory, give out a terrifically fast method of traveling from place to place. Traffic jams, on the other hand, give you a terrific opportunity to stay still. In the rain and the gloom, while around you the cacophonous symphony of horns grew ever louder and more exasperated. Crowley was getting sick of it. He'd taken the opportunity to reread Aziraphale's notes, and to thumb through Agnes Nutter's prophecies, and to do some serious thinking. His conclusions could be summarized as follows. 1. Armageddon was underway. 2. There was nothing Crowley could do about this. 3. It was going to happen in Tadfield, or to begin there at any rate. After that, it was going to happen everywhere. 4. Crowley was in Hell's bad books. Footnote saying, not that Hell has any other kind. 5. Aziraphale was, as far as could be estimated, out of the equation. 6. All was black, gloomy, and awful. There was no light at the end of the tunnel, or if there was, it was an oncoming train. 7. He might just as well find a nice little restaurant and get completely and utterly pissed out of his mind while he waited for the world to end. 8. And yet... And that was where it all fell apart. Because underneath it all, Crowley was an optimist. If there was one rock-hard certainty that had sustained him throughout the bad times, he thought briefly of the 14th century. Then it was utter surety that he would come out on top, that the universe would look after him. Okay, so, hell was down on him. So the world was ending. So the Cold War was over and the Great War was starting for real. So the odds against him were higher than a vanload of hippies on a blotter full of Owsley's old original. There was still a chance. It was all a matter of being in the right place at the right time. The right place was Tadfield. He was certain of that, partly from the book, partly from some other sense. In Crowley's mental map of the world, Tadfield was throbbing like a migraine. The right time was getting there before the end of the world. He checked his watch. He had 2 hours to get to Tadfield, although probably even the normal passage of time was pretty shaky by now. Crowley tossed the book into the passenger seat. Desperate times, desperate measures. He had maintained the Bentley without a scratch for 60 years. What the hell? He reversed suddenly, causing severe damage to the front of the red Renault 5 behind him, and drove up onto the pavement. He turned on his lights and sounded his horn. That should give any pedestrian sufficient warning that he was coming, and if they couldn't get out of the way, well, it'd all be the same in a couple of hours. Maybe. Probably. "Hey ho!" said Anthony Crowley, and just drove anyway. Let me drink that water. Right. Let us continue. There were 6 women and 4 men, and each of them had a telephone and the thick wad of computer printout covered with names and telephone numbers. By each of the numbers was a penned notation saying whether the person dialed was in or out, whether the number was currently connected, and most importantly, whether or not anybody who answered the phone was avid for cavity wall insulation to enter their lives. Most of them weren't. The 10 people sat there, hour after hour, cajoling, pleading, promising through plastic smiles. Between calls they made notations, sipped coffee, and marveled at the rain flooding down the windows. They were staying at their posts like the band on the Titanic. If you couldn't sell double glazing in weather like this, you couldn't sell it at all. Lisa Morrow was saying, "Now, if you'll only let me finish, sir, and yes, I understand that, sir, but if you'll only—" And then seeing that he just hung up on her, she said, "Well, up yours, snotface." She put down the phone. "I got another bath," she announced to her fellow telephone salespersons. She was well in the lead in the office daily getting people out of the bath stakes, and only needed 2 more points to win the weekly Coitus Interruptus award. She dialed the next number on the list. Lisa had never intended to be a telephone salesperson. What she really wanted to be was an internationally glamorous jet-setter, but she didn't have the O-levels. Had she been studious enough to be accepted as an internationally glamorous jet-setter or a dental assistant, her second choice of profession, or indeed anything other than a telephone salesperson in that particular office, she would have had a longer and probably more fulfilled life. Perhaps not a very much longer life, all things considered, it being the day of Armageddon, but several hours anyway. For that matter, all she really needed to do for a longer life was not ring the number she had just dialed, listed on her sheet as the Mayfair home of, in the best traditions of 10th-hand mail-order lists, Mr. A.J. Cowley. But she had dialed, and she had waited while it rang 4 times, and she had said, "Oh, put another answer phone," and made to put down the handset. But then something climbed out of the earpiece, something very big and very angry. It looked like a little like a maggot, a huge, angry maggot made out of thousands and thousands of tiny little maggots, all writhing and screaming, millions of little maggot mouths opening and shutting in fury, and every one of them was screaming, "Crowley!" It stopped screaming, swayed blindly, seemed to be taking stock of where it was. Then it went to pieces. The thing split into thousands of writhing gray maggots. They flowed over the carpet, up over the desks, over Lisa Morrow and her 9 colleagues. They flowed into their mouths, up their nostrils, into their lungs. They burrowed into flesh and eyes and brains and lights, reproducing wildly as they went, filling the room with a towering mess of writhing flesh and gunk. The whole began to flow together, to coagulate into one huge entity that filled the room from floor to ceiling, pulsing gently. A mouth opened in the mass of flesh, strands of something wet and sticky adhering to each of the not exactly lips, and Hastur said, "I needed that." Spending half an hour trapped on an answer phone with only Aziraphale's message for company had not improved his temper. Neither did the prospect of having to report back to Hell, and having to explain why he hadn't returned half an hour earlier, and, more importantly, why he was not accompanied by Crowley. Hell did not go a bundle on failures. On the plus side, however, he at least knew what Aziraphale's message was. The knowledge could probably buy him his continued existence. And anyway, he reflected, if he were going to have to face the possible wrath of the Dark Council, at least it wouldn't be on an empty stomach. The room filled with thick, sulphurous smoke. When it cleared, Hastur was gone. There was nothing left in the room but 10 skeletons, picked quite clean of meat, and some puddles of melted plastic, with, here and there, a gleaming fragment of metal that might once have been a part of a telephone. Much better have been a dental assistant. Much better to have been a dental assistant. But, to look on the bright side, all this only went to prove that evil contains the seeds of its own destruction. Right now, across the country, people who would otherwise have been made just that little bit more tense and angry by being summoned from a nice bath, or having their names mispronounced at them, were instead feeling quite untroubled and at peace with the world. As a result of Hastur's action, a wave of low-grade goodness started to spread exponentially through the population, and millions of people who ultimately would have suffered minor bruises of the soul did not in fact do so. So that was all right. Another drink. Let us continue. You wouldn't have known it as the same car. There was scarcely an inch of it undented. Both front lights were smashed. The hubcaps were long gone. It looked like the veteran of 100 demolition derbies. The pavements had been bad. The pedestrian underpass had been worse. The worst bit had been crossing the River Thames. At least he'd had the foresight to roll up all the windows. Still, he was here, now. In a few hundred yards he'd be on the M40, a fairly clear run-up to Oxfordshire. There was only one snag. Once more between Crowley and the open road was the M25, a screaming, glowing ribbon of pain and dark light. Footnote saying, not actually an oxymoron, it's the color past ultraviolet. The technical term for it is infra-black. It can be seen quite easily under experimental conditions. To perform the experiment, simply select a healthy brick wall with a good run-up and lowering your head charge. The color that flashes and bursts behind your eyes, behind the pain, just before you die, is infra-black. And the footnote. Odegra. Nothing could cross it and survive. Nothing mortal, anyway. And he wasn't sure what it would do to a demon. It couldn't kill him, but it wouldn't be pleasant. There was a police roadblock in front of the flyover before him. Burnt-out wrecks, some still burning, testified to the fate of previous cars that had to drive across the flyover above the dark road. The police did not look happy. Crowley shifted down into second gear and gunned the accelerator. He went through the roadblock at 60. That was the easy bit. Cases of spontaneous human combustion are on record all over the world. 1 minute someone's quite happily chugging along with their life. The next there's a sad photograph of a pile of ashes and the lonely and mysteriously uncharred foot or hand. Cases of spontaneous vehicular combustion are less well documented. Whatever the statistics were, they had just gone up by 1. The leather seat covers began to smoke. Staring ahead of him, Crowley fumbled left-handed on the passenger seat for Agnes Nutter's nice and accurate prophecies, moved it to the safety of his lap. He wished she'd prophesied this. Footnote saying, she had. It read, a street of light will scream, the black chariot of the serpent will flame, and the queen will sing quick silver songs no more. Most of the family had gone along with Gelati Device, who wrote a brief monograph in the 1830s explaining it as a metaphor for the management of Weishaupt's Illuminati from Bavaria in 1785. And the footnote. Then the flames engulfed the car. He had to keep driving. On the other side of the flyover was a further police roadblock to prevent the passage of cars trying to come into London. They were laughing about a story that had just come over the radio that a motorbike cop on the M6 had flagged down a stolen police car, only to discover the driver to be a large octopus. Some police forces would believe anything. Not the Metropolitan Police, though. The Met was the hardest, most cynically pragmatic, most stubbornly down-to-earth police force in Britain. It would take a lot to face a copper from the Met. It would take, for example, a huge battered car that was nothing more nor less than a fireball, a blazing, roaring, twisted metal lemon from hell, driven by a grinning lunatic in sunglasses, sitting amid the flames, trailing thick black smoke, coming straight at them through the lashing rain and the wind at 80 miles per hour. That would do it every time. The quarry was the calm center of a stormy world. Thunder didn't just rumble overhead, it tore the air in half. "I've got some more friends coming," Adam repeated. "They'll be here soon, and then we can really get started." Dog started to howl. It was no longer the siren howl of a lone wolf, but the weird oscillations of a small dog in deep trouble. Pepper had been sitting staring at her knees. There seemed to be something on her mind. Finally she looked up and stared Adam in the blank gray eyes. "What bit are you going to have, Adam?" she said. The storm was replaced by sudden, ringing silence. "What?" said Adam. "Well, you've divided up the world, right, and we'll all of us got to have a bit. What bit you're going to have?" The silence sang like a harp, high and thin. "Yeah," said Brian. "You never told us what bit you're having." "Pepper is right," said Wensleydale. "Don't seem to me there's much left, if we got to have all these countries." Adam's mouth opened and shut. "What?" he said. "What bit's yours, Adam?" said Pepper. Adam stared at her. Dog had stopped howling and had fixed his master with an intent, thoughtful mongrel stare. Me?" he said. The silence went on and on, one note that could drown out the noises of the world. "But I'll have Tadfield," said Adam. They stared at him. And Lower Tadfield, and Norton Woods." They still stared. Adam's gaze dragged itself across their faces. "They're all I've ever wanted," he said. They shook their heads. "I can have 'em if I want," said Adam, his voice tinged with sullen defiance, and his defiance edged with sudden doubt. "I can make them better, too. Better trees to climb, better ponds, better—" His voice trailed off. "You can't," said Wensleydale flatly. "They're not like America in those places. They're not really real. Anyway, they belong to all of us. They're ours." "And you couldn't make them better," said Brian. "Anyway, if you did, we'd all know," said Pepper. "Oh, if that's all that's worrying you, don't you worry," said Adam airily, "'cause I could make you all just do whatever I wanted." He stopped, his ears listening in horror to the words his mouth was speaking. The them were backing away. Dog put his paws over his head. Adam's face looked an impersonation of the collapse of empire. "No," he said hoarsely. "No, come back! I command you!" They froze in mid-dash. Adam stared. "No, I didn't mean it," he began. "You're my friends." His body jerked. His head was thrown back. He raised his arms and pounded the sky with his fists. His face twisted. The chalk floor cracked under his trainers. Adam opened his mouth and screamed. It was a sound that a merely mortal throat should not have been able to utter. It wound out of the quarry, mingled with the storm, caused the clouds to curdle into new and unpleasant shapes. It went on and on. It resounded around the universe, which is a good deal smaller than physicists would believe. It rattled the celestial spheres. It spoke of loss, and it did not stop for a very long time. And then it did. Something drained away. Adam's head tilted down again. His eyes opened. Whatever had been standing in the old quarry before, Adam Young was standing there now. A more knowledgeable Adam Young, but Adam Young nonetheless. Possibly more of Adam Young than there had ever been before. The ghastly silence in the quarry was replaced by a more familiar, comfortable silence. The mere and simple absence of noise. The freed them cowered against the chalk cliff, their eyes fixed on him. "It's all right," said Adam quietly. "Pepper? Wensley? Brian? Come back here. It's all right. It's all right. I know everything now, and you've got to help me, otherwise it's all going to happen. It's really all going to happen. It's all going to happen if we don't do something." The plumbing in Jasmine Cottage heaved and rattled and showered Newt with water that was slightly khaki in color. But it was cold. It was probably the coldest cold shower Newt had ever had in his life. It didn't do any good. "There's a red sky," he said, when he came back. He was feeling slightly manic. At 4:30 in the afternoon, in August. What does that mean, in terms of delighted nautical operatives, would you say? I mean, if it takes a red sky at night to delight a sailor, what does it take to amuse the man who operates the computers on a supermarket? Or on a super tanker, even? Or is it shepherds who are delighted at night? I can never remember. Anathema eyed the plaster in his hair. The shower hadn't got rid of it. It had merely dampened it down and spread it out, so that Newt looked as though he was wearing a white hat with hair on it. "You must have got quite a bump," she said. "No, that was when I hit my head on the wall. You know when you—" "Yes." Anathema looked quizzically out the broken window. "Would you say it's blood-colored?" she said. "It's very important." "I wouldn't say that," said Newt. His train of thought temporarily derailed. "Not actual blood, more pinkish. Probably the storm put a lot of dust in the air." Anathema was rummaging through the nice and accurate prophecies. "What are you doing?" he said. "Trying to cross-reference." "I still can't be—" "I don't think you need to bother," said Newt. "I know what the rest of 3477 means. It came to me when I—" "What do you mean you know what it means?" "I saw it on my way down here, and don't snap like that. My head aches. I mean, I saw it. They got it written down outside that airbase of yours. It's got nothing to do with peace. It's peace is our profession. It's the kind of thing they put up on boards outside of airbases. You know, SAC 87577 5th Wing, the Screaming Blue Demons, peace is our profession, that sort of thing." Newt clutched his head. The euphoria was definitely fading. If Agnes was right, then there's probably some madman in there right now, winding up all the missiles and knocking the governor balls off. Or whatever they got. "No, there isn't," said Anathema firmly. "Oh, yes? I've seen films. Name me one good reason why you can't be so sure." "There aren't any bombs there, or missiles. Everyone around here knows that." "But it's an airbase. It's got runways." "That's just for transport planes and things. All they got up there is communications gear, radios and stuff. Nothing explosive at all." Newt stared at her. End of chapter. Well, there you go. Big stretch. Oh, wow, Archibald's covering my entire desk. Doofus, boy. Baby. Okay, so the next chapter is also an hour long, which is a bit too long, perhaps. Should be reading it right now. And that would probably... Well, Minnie, hi, hello, good morning, how are you doing? Incredible, you're incredible, Minnie. Dang right you are. Wow. And Hattie, hi, with your 15 stream streak. Tired? Yeah, I'm also tired. Golden marble, Hattie. Oh my god. Made out of solid gold. Yeah, yeah, maybe I got 25% of the book left. Maybe I should just leave this remainder for next time. Because if I read this next bit, it's probably gonna be like Trying not to way back to the octopus. Yeah, that was pretty great. Would an octopus even be able to wave outside of water? I'm not sure. Also, I feel like I'm getting a fever again or something because I'm sweating. Even though it's not that warm. That's weird. But yeah, maybe I will just go and stop reading for now and I don't know. Maybe do something else. Best to not... Exactly, Minnie. Precisely. Best to not overdo it. Yeah, let's stop the recording for now and I'll just finish reading next week.